What do you think it feels like to stand at the edge of a world that is just beginning to understand itself, while the sun warms clay walls older than most of your dreams? You breathe in the present moment. Yes, present, because the story touches you now, not as a dusty relic tucked between museum labels, but as a pulse still trembling beneath Sumerian soil. Before you, Uruk rises, shimmering heat above baked brick towers, the hush of early vendors unrolling reed mats, and the distant rumble of animals waking in pens. You catch the scent of barley bread and river mud braided together on the wind. A stray goat eyes you with judgment. Don't take it personally. Goats have been critics since the 4th millennium BCE. You blink, and your senses sharpen. Everything around you stirs with both ancient majesty and the faint awareness that you, a wandering listener, are stepping into a story carved in cuneiform long before hashtags or iced lattes existed. Somewhere beyond these walls your phone probably buzzes. But relax, you won't need it here. This is Uruk, cradle of kings and legends, where reality walks arm in arm with myth and doesn't bother pretending otherwise. A quick reality check. No, you aren't actually teleporting back through time. But the truth is that traces of Uruk still shape us. Writing, kingship, urban life, even the idea of recorded stories, they all converge here. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. As you settle in, tell me your location and the local time. Now let the fires of the world's oldest cities warm your imagination as we step together across the threshold. You walk forward as the sun climbs, touching each mud brick with glints of gold, and it feels as if the city itself exhales. Uruk, according to mainstream historians, was one of humanity's first true urban centers, a place where tens of thousands lived within its defensible walls. The great temples to Anu and Inanna pierce the horizon, their platforms rising like promises to the sky. You feel small beneath them, small in a strangely comforting way, like being a single bead sliding along a massive ancestral necklace. But beneath this serenity, something heavier churns within the city's heart. Whispers slip through the alleys. The king does not sleep. The king demands more. The king's strength bends even the bravest. You feel the tension in the air, taut like the bowstrings that Sumerian hunters stretch before releasing arrows at gazelles. For here in Uruk rules Gilgamesh, a king 2/3 divine, 1/3 human, and entirely overwhelming. You haven't yet seen him, but the people describe him with a mixture of awe and exhaustion. Some call him a giant, others a storm wearing a crown. Mothers hush unruly children by murmuring his name. Even the old men playing dice. Yes, simple gaming pieces existed long before modern board game cafes. Pause when someone mentions their ruler. You can almost hear the fear tucked between their jokes. Historians still argue whether the real Gilgamesh was an actual king from the early dynastic period or a composite of heroic figures. But in Uruk's streets, such debates matter little. To these people, he is unquestionably real. His shadow falls over their homes whether scholars approve or not. You drift through the markets, letting voices swirl around you, vendors shouting prices, bronze tools clinking, the rustle of reeds in baskets stacked high. You pass a scribe hunched over a clay tablet, his stylus dancing quickly, records of grain deliveries, perhaps, or a list of offerings for Inanna. He glances at you as if briefly wondering whether you're late with your taxes. A fair concern. Bureaucracy is older than all of us, and somewhere nearby a priest stirs incense, whose aroma coils like soft fingers around your senses. Then, with a sudden hush, people scatter from the main avenue. Something is happening. No, someone is approaching. Your pulse steadies as you step closer, drawn by curiosity more than caution. Out of the bright haze walks a figure, surrounded not by guards alone, but by an almost physical force of presence. Even before your eyes fully register him, you feel him, as if the ground beneath your feet shifts to accommodate his stride. Gilgamesh. He is taller than anyone around him, broad-shouldered, with hair bound in thick curls that glint in the sunlight. His tunic is woven with patterns only royalty can wear, but it's his eyes that strike you, sharp, searching, always slightly restless, as though he's scanning for something the world refuses to give him. The people bow, some stiffly, others with genuine reverence. You remain still, not yet sure what posture one adopts when facing a semi-divine monarch. Something respectful, but also something that allows your knees to keep working. He steps past you, and the air feels charged. You catch snatches of conversation behind him, complaints that he presses the young men too hard, that he demands labor for grand construction, that no one dares challenge him. And yet there's pride too, pride that their king is unlike any other, born to shake the boundaries between gods and mortals. You trail behind the procession, allowing your thoughts to drift. Somewhere in the back of your mind you recall a fringe tidbit. Some modern enthusiasts believe Gilgamesh's exaggerated height might hint at a real ancient warrior whose unusual stature led to legends of giants. It's not mainstream consensus, but fringe ideas often sprout like weeds around famous figures. And weeds, as any gardener knows, are stubborn storytellers. As you follow the king's path toward the towering Eanna precinct, you notice artisans chiseling decorative reliefs into wet mud brick. Each design reveals animals, stars, or scenes of devotion. Sumerian art blending cosmic order with earthly craft. The city hums around you, alive and intricate. You feel as if you have stepped into the first chapter of the world's longest-running epic. But then a shuttered window rattles. A woman inside murmurs that the gods may have given Gilgamesh strength, but they did not give him restraint. Her voice carries the familiar weariness of someone who has repeated this complaint more than once. The king's great works, walls, temples, monumental gates, demand tremendous labor, and he expects obedience as readily as he breathes. You sense a swelling tension beneath the city's beauty, like a river straining against its banks. Something must give, something must break, and you are here, feet planted in the dust of Uruk's dawn, just as the story sharpens toward that turning point. You pause near the great gate, letting the sun warm your face. The king's footsteps fade into the temple district, leaving behind a quiet, charged with possibility. Somewhere beyond the horizon, a counterbalance is forming, an answer to the unchecked force you've just witnessed. But that comes later. For now, you stand at the threshold of Uruk, the story's pulse beating beneath your heels, and the world feels freshly carved, ready to reveal its first great shift. You remain at the edge of the temple district a moment longer, letting the dust settle around your sandals as Gilgamesh disappears into the sanctum's shadow. You feel the echo of his presence lingering like the last vibration of a plucked lyre string, strong, resonant, and a little unsettling. You move forward, drawn deeper into the city's pulse, and the story wraps itself around you like warm linen. You follow a narrow lane where children chase each other between clay ovens, still warm from dawn baking. Their laughter rings out, but even they speak of the king. One small boy, no taller than your hip, waves a stick like a spear and declares himself 2/3 god, before promptly tripping over a goat. You bite back a smile. Mythic proportions evidently have practical limits. A woman nearby snorts and mutters that the boy already imitates Gilgamesh's temper, another gentle reminder that Uruk loves and resents its king in equal measure. As you step deeper into the city, you begin to sense something older than Gilgamesh, something woven into Uruk's very clay, the shaping power of its gods. The white temple of Anu towers above the rooftops, its gleaming plaster catching the sunlight like a fallen shard of sky. It's not just majestic, it's historically significant, one of the earliest monumental temples ever raised by human hands. The sight presses awe into your chest. You can almost feel ancient worshippers climbing its ramps, steady and solemn, carrying offerings that smell of sweet oils and crushed dates. Yet beneath this grandeur lies an extraordinary secret about Gilgamesh's birth. The elders seated near the temple steps speak in hushed tones as you pass. They recall how his mother, the goddess Ninsun, wise, cow-eyed, guardian of dreams, bore him after visions of a son destined to shake the boundaries of heaven and earth. His father, they say, was Lugalbanda, a king so revered that later generations mythologized him too. You listen, imagining a boy who grew up believing gods watched his every step. No wonder he strides like someone expecting the ground to adjust to his will. And then someone adds a detail you didn't expect. As a child, Gilgamesh supposedly dismantled a ceremonial drum so he could study its secret construction. That drum, now lost to time, is said in fringe retellings to have held a property believed to command spirits through rhythm. You blink. It's the ancient equivalent of a kid taking apart a toaster, except with more cosmological consequences. Whether or not the story is true, you have to admit, it's memorable. You wander into the royal compound, a maze of courtyards warmed by the afternoon sun. Servants hurry past with baskets of dates, jars of beer, and woven robes threaded with lapis lazuli beads. Each object speaks of a king who demands the world present itself in its finest form. You step aside as a group of young men jog through the corridor, sweat glistening on their shoulders. They train because Gilgamesh insists anyone serving him must match his unending stamina. One groans, muttering that the king races horses until even the horses complain. You almost laugh. There's your first joke for this stretch, but you also sense the weary truth behind it. You pause at a garden bordered by tall reeds swaying in the heat. The sound of a lyre drifts toward you, its notes gentle and melancholic. An older tutor sits on a mat, lute in hand, recounting fragments of Gilgamesh's youth to a cluster of attentive novices. You settle nearby, not intruding, simply listening. He explains how Gilgamesh was a brilliant child, quick to learn, quicker to act, and quickest to defy. His strength grew early, like a river in flood season. But strength without guidance invites storm, and Gilgamesh's impulses often outpaced wisdom. It is said that when he first practiced archery, he shot arrows so far that no one could retrieve them. Instead, scribes marked where they landed and updated the training grounds accordingly. Historians still argue whether such feats came from a memory of an actual king or from poetic embellishment layered over centuries. You consider both possibilities. Legends stretch the truth, but they rarely arise from nothing. The tutor shifts his song to a quieter melody. He tells of the queen mother Ninsun, who tried to tame her son's intensity with ritual, counsel, and starlit prayers. She taught him that strength without compassion becomes tyranny. She warned him that immortality granted to the gods is a burden humans are not meant to bear. You can almost see her kneeling before an altar, her palms open, asking the celestial realm to soften the heart of her ferocious child. But even divine mothers face limits. Gilgamesh grew into his adolescent power like a lion discovering its roar, and Uruk bore the weight of every reverberation. You see it in the walls. They're rebuilding again and again, each phase larger, stronger, more ambitious than the last. Some of these walls are still visible today, their foundations stretching over 9 kilometers, a historically verified marvel. You admire them as you run your fingers across sun-warmed brick. These stones whisper of both skill and oppression. Gilgamesh built wonders, yes, but at the cost of pushing his people harder than they could endure. As you walk, a sudden shout cuts through the compound. A young man exits the training yard, clutching a bruised arm. "The king says I must match him tomorrow," he complains. His friend pats his shoulder sympathetically and jokes that perhaps they should trade places with the palace goats. They at least get to nap. A second joke slips in, gentle but sharp. Yet you notice something beneath the humor, a tremor of fear, a sense that none can refuse the king's demands. That imbalance feels unstable, like a heavy stone perched on too small a ledge. You sense the inevitability of a counterforce forming somewhere far from the palace, perhaps not yet born in human form. Near the gardens, a storyteller draws a small crowd. Her tapestry depicts stars and animals, woven in deliberate, looping patterns. She speaks of omens from Gilgamesh's infancy, dreams of meteors crashing into the earth, of axes appearing at his side, symbols interpreted by priests as signs of a companion destined to stand beside him, equal in strength. Her voice carries through the corridor, a soft thread weaving into your memory. You feel a chill despite the heat. The story hints at what is coming. Someone fashioned not from royal blood or divine lineage, but from the raw material of nature itself. But for now, you remain with the young king, walking unseen through the mosaic of memory that shaped him. You look again at the palace. Its walls glow red in the sinking sun. Its banners ripple. And beneath it all, beneath the grandeur and myth, you sense a truth. Gilgamesh is powerful but incomplete. The world is preparing his counterpart. One who will meet him not as subject or rival, but as mirror. You feel the air change before the story leads you beyond Uruk's walls. It's as if the city, with all its bustle and brittle pride, exhales, and the desert inhales. You step away from the baked brick streets and into a vast, trembling openness. The sky widens, the wind grows teeth, and you find yourself moving toward a place where civilization loosens its grip, and something older, wilder, begins to stir. The land spreads in every direction, a woven tapestry of grasslands, thorny shrubs, and patches of cracked clay where heat shimmers like restless spirits. Out here, no temple bells ring, no merchants haggle, no king demands obedience. Instead, you hear only the complaints of insects, the occasional cry of a distant animal, and the steady hush of the steppe wind. You breathe in air that smells of dust, bark, and a freedom so fierce it almost scares you. Somewhere across this expanse, something moves. At first, it's just a ripple in the golden sea of grasses, a disturbance too deliberate to be the wind. You step closer, squinting beneath the sun's harsh glare. There, another shift. A shadow, a form. Then the unmistakable silhouette rises like a new mountain cresting the earth. Enkidu. You don't yet know his name, but your bones do. Every part of the story vibrates as he straightens to his full height. A man shaped not in palaces or temples, but by wind, water, and wild instinct. His hair hangs in tangled waves, thick as river reeds. His shoulders, broad as a bull's, glisten with sweat and dust. And his eyes? They carry an untamed clarity, the kind you see in animals who have never bowed to anyone. He stands barefoot on cracked soil, toes gripping the earth. When he breathes, it's as though the whole landscape breathes with him. You feel it. He is not separate from the wild. He is the wild, compressed into human form. Mainstream scholars generally agree Enkidu represents the natural world confronting early civilization, a symbolic counterpart to Gilgamesh's urban dominance. But fringe retellings whisper stranger things, that Enkidu may have been inspired by tales of ancient green men, guardians of forests who appear across disparate cultures. You tilt your head, imagining the steppe having its own guardian, long before mossy medieval carvings appeared. It's a tempting thought, even if your inner historian raises an eyebrow. Enkidu bends to drink from a spring, cupping the water in palms shaped by nature's patience. His reflection shivers. Around him, gazelles gather without fear, and lions lounge nearby as though he's just another evening breeze. At one moment, he runs alongside the herds, swift as their legs, alert as their twitching ears. At another, he stands shoulder to shoulder with predators, sharing their silence, their watchfulness. You watch as he frees an animal caught in a hunter's snare. His movements are gentle, murmuring reassurance as the creature limps away. Then he turns his attention to the hunters themselves, men from Uruk who rely on these plains for game. They whisper curses as their traps fail again and again, sabotaged by this strange wild man who protects beasts instead of killing them. One hunter, trembling, rushes back toward the city. You follow at an invisible distance, your feet stirring thin spirals of dust. His fear spills out in shattered breaths as he reaches the house of his father. "A giant roams the steppe," he cries. "He tears my traps! He frees all animals! I cannot hunt!" His father listens, his expression tightening with a mixture of dread and something else. Recognition, perhaps. He urges his son to report the encounter to the priests, for surely the gods must have a hand in this. And indeed, historians still argue whether stories like this reflect real conflicts between early shepherds and wild tribes or symbolic clashes about the rise of agriculture. You can see both truths living here, layered like sediment. The hunter is sent not to the warriors, but to someone far more influential, a priestess of Inanna, the goddess of love, war, and the tangled spaces in between. You follow him back across the fields to a ceremonial tent drenched in fragrance, where the priestess listens with half-lidded eyes. Her presence carries authority, not the rigid authority of kings, but the velvety, mesmerizing kind that slips through the mind like incense. She nods slowly. "A wild man," she says, "created by the gods to stand against Gilgamesh." The words fall with the weight of prophecy. She rises, gathering ritual adornments, perfumed oils, beads, and flowing garments that gleam in the sun. Then she follows the hunter out into the wilderness, her steps unhurried, her confidence unshakable. You walk beside her, feeling the wind lift strands of her hair like threads of flame. The meeting happens beside the same spring where Enkidu quenched his thirst. He glances up, eyes wide, posture shifting like a startled wolf. The priestess kneels beside the water, her movements fluid, inviting. For days, yes, days, she remains with him, teaching him human presence, language, tenderness, ritual, and the beginnings of self-awareness. She becomes his bridge to civilization, coaxing him gently toward something deeper than instinct. And here, the story slips a joke into your hand. Enkidu, so mighty he can outrun a gazelle, is completely undone by polite conversation. Watching him try to form new words is like watching a lion attempt small talk at a dinner party, noble, impressive, and utterly confused. But as he learns, you see the shift. The animals who once embraced him now back away. They sense his transformation, the invisible thread pulling him toward Uruk. The priestess tells him of Gilgamesh, his power, his pride, his loneliness disguised as tyranny. She speaks of the cries of the people, the imbalance of the crown, and the need for a force that can stand against such unrestrained might. Enkidu listens. His heartbeat deepens. His jaw tightens. Something old and primal awakens. Not rage, but purpose. He stands. Dust cascades from his skin. His eyes turn toward the distant city, like twin lanterns catching the horizon. And you know, without words, without prophecy carved in clay, that the world is holding its breath. Two great forces have been shaped by divine will and human longing. They have been carved in parallel paths, never touching, until now. Enkidu steps forward. Uruk awaits. You feel the earth tighten beneath your feet as Enkidu begins his long, determined march toward Uruk. Each step he takes presses a promise into the soil, a promise that the balance of the world is about to shift. The wind trails behind him like a loyal shadow, and you follow, sensing the pull of destiny humming between the two men who have yet to meet. Uruk rises slowly in the distance, its walls glowing in the morning sun like the ribs of a sleeping titan. The road grows busier as you approach the city. Farmers lead donkeys weighed down with barley. Fishermen return from the riverbanks, baskets sloshing with silver-scaled catch. Children gawk at Enkidu, whispering as if they've spotted a wandering demigod, or perhaps a very confused tree. One particularly brave child points and announces, "He's so hairy, he must be best friends with the goats." You stifle a laugh. There's joke won for this stretch. But beneath the humor, something solemn deepens. The scent of incense lingers along the main avenue. A procession is underway. You recognize the banners fluttering at the front, the insignia of Anu, Sky Father, and above all others, the star of Inanna, goddess of love and war. These ceremonies unfold daily, but today the atmosphere vibrates. The people murmur anxiously, glancing toward the palace. Gilgamesh is out again. You feel his presence before you see him, just like before. A pressure-eated pocket in the air, a small gravitational field that tugs eyes and attention. When he rounds the corner, flanked by attendants, you can tell he is in one of his restless moods. His gaze sweeps the street with a force that makes vendors step back from their stalls. He walks with the controlled ferocity of a caged lion, pacing near a weak latch. His authority is unquestioned, but the tension in the crowd hints at resentment ripening like fruit left too long in the heat. Enkidu arrives at that exact moment. He strides into the avenue, his silhouette blocking the sunlight, dust swirling around his feet. The crowd gasps. Some step back. Others remain frozen, caught between fear and fascination. Gilgamesh stops mid-stride. His attendants falter. The air between the two men feels like drawn bowstring, silent, stretched, ready to snap. You stand close enough to feel the tremor beneath the ground. Gilgamesh's eyes narrow, studying the wild man before him. Enkidu lifts his chin, returning the gaze without flinching. For a heartbeat, neither moves. It is astonishing, really. Two beings crafted so differently, raised in worlds far apart, yet identical in the intensity of their spirits. Then Gilgamesh steps forward, but before he can speak, before a single word breaks the tension, Enkidu blocks his path. Not by force, not yet, but with the simple and absolute refusal of one who has come to challenge injustice. The crowd recoils, hands covering mouths, eyes wide. No one blocks the king, ever. This is as unthinkable as a fish climbing a ziggurat. Gilgamesh's jaw tightens. He squares his shoulders, his muscles tensing beneath his tunic. And suddenly, without warning, he lunges. The impact is thunder. They crash into each other like storm fronts colliding, dust erupting around them. Gilgamesh's arm loops around Enkidu's shoulder. Enkidu's hand clamps around Gilgamesh's forearm. Both strain, grappling, twisting, kicking up clouds that swallow the square. The ground shakes as if the gods themselves lean closer to watch. People scatter, ducking behind stalls and pillars. You remain rooted, drawn by the sheer power radiating from the struggle. A vendor nearby mutters, "If they break the street again, I swear I'm not repairing it this time." A thin laugh escapes you. Joke too. courtesy of civic frustration spanning millennia. The fight rolls across the plaza like a living storm. Gilgamesh forces Enkidu back a step. Then Enkidu heaves forward, sending the king sliding across the dust. They clash again, their limbs tangling, their grunts sharp and primal. They fall, rise, fall again. Their strength is staggering. A mainstream historical detail whispers through your thoughts. Ancient Mesopotamian kings were renowned for their athleticism, wrestling skills, and ceremonial combat. You're witnessing a mythic version of a very real tradition. Yet something unexpected happens. The longer they wrestle, the more their expressions begin to shift, from fury to frustration to something almost puzzled. It's as if each realizes at the same moment that the other cannot be overpowered. Their forces match too closely. Their resolve mirrors too precisely. This is not a clash meant to end in victory or defeat. It is a recognition. Gilgamesh's grip loosens. Enkidu's breathing slows. Dust settles around them like a cloak. Both remain kneeling, still locked in each other's gaze. The crowd waits, holding its breath. You sense the gods waiting too. Then Gilgamesh laughs. Not a mocking laugh. Not a cruel one. A real, startled, disbelieving laugh. As though he has been stumbling through his own power for years and only now realizes the world has finally sent him an equal. Enkidu exhales, the tension melting from his rigid form. He rises first, offering a hand. Gilgamesh takes it. Their clasp, fierce and unyielding, is an unspoken treaty crafted not by courts or priests, but by the wrestling of souls. People peek out from behind stalls, whispering in amazement. Some smile. A few weep. Something monumental has shifted in Uruk. Not the walls, not the palaces, but the spirit of the city itself. You walk with the two men as they turn toward the palace, side by side now, strides aligned. Already the early seeds of their friendship begin to sprout. Gilgamesh studies Enkidu with newfound curiosity. Enkidu studies the city with wary fascination. Both sense the other's loneliness, buried beneath layers of strength. Both recognize a missing half suddenly restored. A scholar's phrase echoes faintly. Historians still argue whether this moment reflects an actual alliance between kings and tribal champions, or symbolizes the reconciliation of civilization and wilderness. You don't need the answer. The meaning stands radiant before you. As they cross the threshold of Uruk together, it feels like the world has been stitched more tightly aligned. Something dangerous has ended. Something legendary has begun. And somewhere behind you, a goat bleats loudly, as if reminding you that destiny, grand or not, must always share space with everyday nonsense. Joke 3. Thank the goat. But you barely hear it over the quiet thunder of a new friendship forming. You sense the mood of Uruk shifting as Gilgamesh and Enkidu walk side by side through the palace corridors. Servants whisper behind their hands, not in fear as before, but in bewildered fascination. Two giants, one civilized, one wild, now stride in unison. The air seems to ripple with this new alignment, as though even the dust motes pause mid-float to witness it. That night, the palace glows with lamplight. Musicians tune harps, and the smell of roasted lamb drifts through the halls. Yet the banquet held in honor of Enkidu's arrival is more than feasting and song. It is a soft, tentative weaving of two fates. You watch Gilgamesh raise a cup, then nudge it toward Enkidu, who sniffs it suspiciously before taking a cautious sip. His face scrunches in surprise. "Not bad," he mutters. Gilgamesh laughs, a broad, honest laugh you haven't heard from him before, and claps his friend on the shoulder. The moment feels small, almost mundane, yet it vibrates with significance. The king who once walked alone now shares his table, his wine, his breath. But beneath the warmth of the celebration, another current pulses. You see it in Gilgamesh's gaze, which drifts now and then toward the windows, where the moon hangs heavy above Uruk's walls. You sense it in the way Enkidu's fingers drum against the arm of his seat, restless, searching for purpose. And the city feels it too. People whisper that with a friend at his side, Gilgamesh may finally calm. Others whisper that two such mighty spirits will inevitably seek an outlet for their shared fire. They are both right. As dawn approaches, a servant delivers a carved wooden chest to Gilgamesh. Inside lies a ceremonial axe with an inscription that speaks of divine challenge, conquest, and glory. The king runs a hand over its polished surface, his expression thoughtful. Finally, he turns to Enkidu. "There is a forest," he says, voice low, almost reverent. "Far beyond the farmlands, beyond the plains and hills, a forest guarded by a creature the gods themselves set to watch over it." Enkidu's eyes sharpen. "Humbaba." The name hangs in the air like smoke. The cedar forest of Lebanon, lush, towering, legendary, has always held a special status in ancient Mesopotamian imagination. Mainstream historians confirm that cedar wood was prized for its durability, traded widely across the Near East. But the guardian of the forest, Humbaba, is something else entirely. A creature of myth, often depicted with a monstrous face carved in swirling lines, part demon, part divine sentinel. Gilgamesh rises suddenly, energized. "Let us travel there," he declares. "Let us slay Humbaba and carve our names into the trunks of the tallest cedars. Let the world know our strength." You feel the surge of excitement ripple through the hall. Some servants beam at the promise of a heroic quest. Others pale, knowing that such ventures anger gods as easily as they inspire poets. Enkidu stands reluctantly, the shadows in his gaze deepening. "Gilgamesh," he begins slowly, "Humbaba is no ordinary creature. He is appointed by Enlil himself. To challenge him is to defy the very order of the natural world." His voice trembles, not from fear, but from memory. You sense he has seen the edges of that forest, felt its breath, its ancient heartbeat. Gilgamesh steps closer. "Are you afraid?" Enkidu's jaw twitches. "I am cautious." "Caution," Gilgamesh replies, "is just fear wearing a neat robe." That's joke one, delivered with a smirk only a half-god king could get away with. But the humor fades as the king adds, "You once knew the wild. You know how to face what terrifies other men. Stand beside me." The room waits. The lamps flicker. The cedar forests loom in imagination, cold, deep, filled with ancient breath. Finally, Enkidu nods. A subtle tremor passes through you. You realize you're witnessing not recklessness, but the forging of purpose, two men binding themselves to a legendary risk. A scholar's voice hums in your memory. Historians still argue whether the Cedar Forest expedition reflects actual trade expeditions or symbolic journeys into forbidden territories. You turn the idea over gently. Symbolic or not, the tension feels real. Preparations begin immediately. Craftsmen sharpen bronze blades until they gleam like fallen stars. Armorers fit Gilgamesh with a breastplate rumored, according to fringe enthusiasts, to contain a sliver of stone taken from a meteorite. Whether true or not, its surface glitters in a way that makes you second-guess your skepticism. As the sun rises, the entire city gathers near the gates. Children climb onto their parents' shoulders. Elders lean heavily on staffs. Priests sprinkle water mixed with crushed juniper, letting it drip onto the earth as a blessing for safe passage. Ninsun, Gilgamesh's divine mother, appears at the forefront of the crowd. Draped in flowing white veils, she raises her hands, calling upon the heavens. Her voice slips into the wind like molten gold. She blesses her son's journey, but the furrow in her brow betrays her worry. She turns to Enkidu with tenderness that takes you by surprise. She draws a circle of oil on his forehead. "Protect him," she whispers, "not from his enemies, but from himself." Enkidu bows his head. Gilgamesh adjusts his gear. The two stand ready, their silhouettes framed by the yawning gate. They glance at each other, partners now. Not rivals, not strangers, but two flames converging. You take a step forward with them, the city at your back, the unknown before you. Yet a single moment freezes everything. A child in the crowd shouts, "Bring us a cedar cone!" Another child adds, "And don't break anything this time." You smile. Joke 2, courtesy of Uruk's bold youth. Gilgamesh raises an eyebrow. "We'll try," he says, though you know full well that wherever these two wander, breaking things is practically a divine mandate. The final preparations echo around you. A slinger adjusts his pouch. A smith hammers the last rivet. A donkey brays loudly as if objecting to the entire enterprise. Joke 3, thank the donkey. Then Gilgamesh and Enkidu step forward. Past the walls, into the wild, toward the cedar forest where breath of gods meets the courage of men. And you follow, heart thrumming like a drum calling you onward. You walk with them as the plains widen and the sky grows enormous. The journey to the cedar forest stretches across days, then weeks. Dust clings to your sandals, the sun burns your shoulders, and the nights, oh, the nights, are cold enough that even Gilgamesh shivers beneath his lion skin cloak. The landscape shifts from rolling grasslands to rocky ridges where the earth seems to have lifted its spine toward the heavens. Each dawn breaks with a thin ribbon of pink light stretching across the horizon, and each dusk closes with wolves howling far off in the dark. You learn to move by the rhythm of this world, steady, persevering, alert. One evening, as the three of you settle near a small campfire, Enkidu stares into the flames, his brow furrowed. The firelight dances across his features, casting shadows that look like claw marks slicing across his face. "There is still time to turn back," he repeats quietly. He has said this every night since you reached the foothills. Humbaba's roar shakes trees from their roots. His breath scorches the leaves. His eyes... Enkidu trails off, and a hush settles. Even Gilgamesh, for once, does not interrupt. You sense the truth humming beneath Enkidu's fear. He remembers the forest. He remembers the oppressive stillness, the way animals moved differently beneath the canopy, as if another presence watched through the bark itself. Gilgamesh pokes at the fire with a stick, snorting. "You forget, friend. We have faced each other. If I can survive you, then what can Humbaba possibly do?" There it is, joke one of this stretch, tossed casually between warriors. But beneath the humor lies a fierce belief in their bond. As the fire crackles, you lift your gaze. Ahead, the mountains rise like jagged tablets pressing into the sky. Each night they appear closer, dark ridges glowing faintly beneath the starlight. At their base, somewhere hidden, lies the gate to the cedar forest. Not a literal gate, though ancient Mesopotamian art sometimes depicts one, but a spiritual threshold, a line where the world of mortals dissolves into something older. Historians still argue whether the cedar forest in the epic reflects a real Lebanese landscape or a symbolic realm of divine trial. But here, in the story pulsing around you, it feels absolutely real, tangible, near. At dawn, you crest a hill and see it for the first time. The cedar forest stretches like an emerald ocean, each tree towering far above anything you've seen in Uruk. The trunks are thick as temple pillars. The branches weave together into a canopy that catches the wind and transforms it into a haunting, resonant hum, a sound both beautiful and unnerving. You inhale deeply, catching hints of sap, damp bark, and cool earth. The air feels heavier, enriched with ancient breath. The entrance stands between two colossal cedars, whose intertwined roots resemble serpents embracing. Enkidu stops abruptly. Gilgamesh turns to him. You do too. This place, Enkidu whispers, is protected. Gilgamesh lifts his chin. That is why we enter. You step between the trunks, crossing into shadows so deep they swallow the sunlight. The temperature drops instantly. The forest holds its own climate, its own heartbeat. Birds fall silent as you pass. Leaves, huge and flat, tremble though no wind touches them. Somewhere above, something vast moves between branches, invisible yet present. You feel watched. Enkidu gestures toward claw marks gouged deep into one of the trees. Humbaba, he says grimly. His hand brushes bark. He marks his territory the way spirits mark the boundaries between life and death. You've heard that fringe storytellers describe Humbaba's face as a swirling pattern meant to invoke protective demons. Others claim his visage resembles a grotesque mask used in early exorcism rituals. You file the images in your mind, comparing them to the way the forest seems to breathe around you. Deeper in the woods, the shadows quiver. A low rumble rolls through the trees, so deep you feel it in your spine. Gilgamesh stiffens. Enkidu steps close, placing one hand on the king's shoulder, not to restrain, but to steady. The rumble grows louder. Leaves shake. Birds explode upward in chaotic flight. Something massive pushes through the undergrowth. Then, a roar tears through the forest. Branches snap. The ground shudders. You press your back against a cedar trunk, heart hammering, as Humbaba emerges into view at last. He is enormous. Not merely tall, enormous. His body is layered with thick, bark-like skin. His arms dangle low, hands clawed and heavy. And his face, yes, there it is, carved into strange, concentric spirals, shifting subtly as though made of smoke and wood and shadow, all fused together. Eyes burn like molten amber. When he breathes, steam pours from his nostrils, curling into the air like incense gone wild. Gilgamesh steps forward. His breath shakes, but his stance is steady. Humbaba snarls, the sound ripping through the trunks like lightning. I know you, he rumbles. Son of Ninsun, king of Uruk, you trespass on sacred ground. Enkidu flinches, not at the words, but at the tone. You sense something unspoken between them, a shared history older than either of these men's current forms, a memory buried in bark and soil. Gilgamesh raises his axe. We come for glory, Humbaba laughs, a horrible scraping laugh that sounds like two stones grinding together. Your glory is nothing. Your breath is temporary. Your bones, dust. You can't help yourself. Well, you think, that escalated dramatically. Joke 2. Private, but still counts. The guardian lunges. Gilgamesh meets him with a shout, swinging the axe in a bright arc. Enkidu darts beside him, swift as wind over grass. The impact of wood, bronze, and flesh shakes the clearing. Humbaba's massive arm sweeps across the forest floor, forcing you to leap aside as splinters and dirt fly. The fight is chaotic, furious. Gilgamesh strikes again and again, sparks flying as bronze meets bark-hard skin. Enkidu darts in from the side, aiming at the creature's legs. Humbaba lashes out with a roar that sends shockwaves through the trees. Birds shriek, branches crack, leaves rain down like green snow. Then, in the midst of the storm, Humbaba hesitates, just for a heartbeat. His eyes flare with something that looks strangely like fear. "You," he growls, staring directly at Enkidu. "Traitor to the wild." Enkidu freezes. You feel his pain ripple through the ground. He inhales sharply, as if struck by something deeper than claws. Gilgamesh senses the shift. He grips his axe harder. Sweat drips from his brow. "Enkidu!" he calls. "Focus!" And thank the gods he does. With a roar almost as fierce as Humbaba's, Enkidu drives forward. Gilgamesh follows, their movements braided together now, two spirits fighting as one. They strike, dodge, leap, press. The guardian falters. His breath comes ragged. The forest seems to mourn with each staggering step he takes. A final shout. A final blow. Humbaba falls. The forest falls silent with him. You stand there, trembling. Leaves settle gently around you. Gilgamesh lowers his axe, breathing hard. Enkidu kneels beside the fallen guardian, head bowed. The cedar forest watches, and you feel the cost of victory hanging in the air, heavy as incense, sharp as broken bark. Then something small scurries across your foot. A squirrel. Indignant you interrupted its day. You let out a weak laugh. Joke 3, because even in the aftermath of mythic battle, the world insists on its tiny, absurd moments. But nothing can distract you from this truth. The path ahead has changed forever. The forest holds the silence of a stunned witness. Even the wind seems to halt, hovering in the branches as though waiting for someone, anyone, to explain what has just happened. You stand amid the fallen leaves, catching your breath alongside Gilgamesh and Enkidu. Humbaba's huge form lies sprawled across the clearing, steam rising weakly from his bark-like skin. Gilgamesh rests the butt of his axe on the earth. Sweat streaks his face. Dirt smears his arms. Yet beneath the exhaustion, you see triumph glowing in him like a rising ember. Enkidu, by contrast, sinks to his knees beside the guardian's massive hand. He bows his head. The grief in him is deep, quiet, and strangely tender. You sense it before he speaks, a recognition that Humbaba was not merely an enemy, but an ancient fixture of the world he once knew, a reminder of the wilderness that shaped him. "We should not have done this," he whispers. Gilgamesh stiffens. It's the first time Enkidu's conviction feels heavier than his own. The king's chest rises, falls, rises again. You watch him swallow pride, guilt, confusion, all unfamiliar, unwelcome flavors in his mouth. Finally, Gilgamesh places a hand on Enkidu's shoulder. "We did what we came for," he says, though the words ring hollower than he intends. The forest seems to withdraw, pulling its shadows closer. Even the sunlight that trickles through the canopy looks dimmer. But before the mood sinks too deeply, something interrupts. A bird lands on a branch above you and promptly deposits an offering onto Gilgamesh's shoulder. You choke back a laugh. Gilgamesh looks offended on a cosmic level. Joke 1. Thank the inconsiderate wildlife. The two warriors gather themselves. They are eager to leave the forest now, eager to outrun the uneasy sensation curling through the air. You follow as they begin cutting cedar trunks, their axes thudding rhythmically, releasing the sharp, clean scent of fresh wood. Great beams fall with heavy thuds, ready to be hauled back to Uruk as proof of their victory. It is said in real Sumerian history that cedar was prized above all other timber, used for temples, palaces, and royal boats. It was so valued that kings boasted in inscriptions about their expeditions to retrieve it. You reflect on that as you watch Gilgamesh and Enkidu select only the straightest, tallest trunks. Their pride is unmistakable. Their burden is equally enormous. By midday, sweat clings to both warriors like a second skin. Enkidu pauses often, staring deeper into the forest as though sensing invisible eyes still watching them. Gilgamesh, though determined, moves with a slight tremor now. You sense the moment beginning to weigh on him too. When at last they turn toward the exit of the forest, the hum of the canopy returns, low, mournful, like a chorus of ghosts whispering their displeasure. You step beyond the threshold of the cedars, and sunlight explodes around you, warm and unfiltered. The world opens again into rolling hills, but peace does not come. A shiver moves through the air, thickening it like heated honey. Gilgamesh pauses. Enkidu does too. And then the sky darkens. A streak of light tears downward, splitting the heavens with a sound that rattles your ribs. You flinch instinctively, expecting a thunderbolt. But what descends is not lightning. It is a figure, a presence, a force. Ishtar, goddess of love, beauty, war, storms, desire, and contradictions too numerous to list. She lands with a thunderous grace, her garments shimmering like molten gold and lapis. Her eyes blaze with a heated mix of awe and fury. You feel the intensity of her presence ripple through your skin. Gilgamesh straightens, brushing forest dirt from his tunic, trying and failing to look composed. Ishtar circles him with a smile so radiant it could start a harvest or a war. With her, those outcomes are interchangeable. Gilgamesh, she purrs, you are magnificent. You can practically hear the gears grinding in Gilgamesh's mind as he tries to respond. She continues before he finds words. You have defeated Humbaba. You have proven your strength. You have shown that no creature, mortal or divine, can stand against you. She pauses, then adds with a slow, hungry smile, be my husband. The air freezes. Birds stop mid-flight. Even Enkidu stops breathing. Gilgamesh's eyebrows inch upward. You can almost see his soul attempting to sprint out the back of his skull. He clears his throat. Great goddess, you honor me, but no. You think. Oh no. Gilgamesh, please do not, but. A goddess whose breakup history includes turning lovers into wolves. Historians still argue whether Ishtar's list of transformed partners reflects rites of divine punishment or mythic metaphors for shifting political alliances. Either way, not someone you decline lightly. Gilgamesh, however, has the survival instincts of a drunken camel. But, he continues, your lovers do not fare well. Enkidu winces so hard you hear his teeth grind. Gilgamesh starts listing them, one by one, with examples. And commentary, you bury your face in your hands. This is perhaps the boldest and the stupidest thing you have ever witnessed. Joke 2. Gilgamesh's complete lack of self-preservation. Ishtar's expression slides from seductive to murderous in a heartbeat. Her beauty sharpens into terror. The ground trembles, the sky flickers. You dare, she hisses, refuse me? Gilgamesh opens his mouth. Please don't. But Enkidu gently nudges him hard enough to shut him up. Ishtar rises into the air, shrieking like a star falling apart. Father Anu, she cries, give me the bull of heaven, that I may punish Gilgamesh for this insult. The wind howls, clouds churn, lightning coils around her as she shoots upward, leaving the earth trembling beneath her rage. Gilgamesh rubs his face. Was I wrong? He mutters. Enkidu stares at him. Profoundly. A thin silence hangs before Enkidu adds, "If she returns with the bull of heaven, we are doomed." Gilgamesh shrugs. "We'll handle it." You blink. Handle it? A celestial bull capable of famine, earthquakes, and annihilating entire harvests? Sure. Why not handle it like assembling flat-pack furniture? That's joke 3, your inability to decide if Gilgamesh is brave or just catastrophically irresponsible. The wind shifts again. A new tremor ripples through the hills. You look up. The sky is opening. Something enormous is descending. And Uruk, far behind you, has no idea what is coming. The earth begins to tremble long before you see the creature descending. A deep, rhythmic pulse, like a colossal heartbeat buried under miles of soil, rattles your bones. You press a hand against the ground and feel it vibrate. Pebbles dance. Dust shivers upward in tiny spirals. Enkidu's eyes snap toward the horizon. Gilgamesh tightens his grip on his axe. Then the sky tears open. A massive shadow plunges downward, sunlight bending around it. The clouds twist like wool caught on a spindle. Something enormous and enraged slams into the earth with a force that knocks you backward. The ground cracks, sending shards of rock flying. Air bursts from your lungs. You cough, steady yourself, and lift your head. There, rising from a crater like a living mountain of fury, stands the bull of heaven. Its body glistens with a sheen that looks like bronze pulled fresh from a forge. Steam vents from its nostrils in violent blasts. Its hooves carve trenches in the soil, and its eyes, glowing, molten, merciless, lock immediately onto Gilgamesh. A roar erupts from its throat, so loud the sky flickers. You stumble back a step. Even Gilgamesh sways. Enkidu mutters a curse under his breath that somehow manages to stay PG-13. The bull lunges. Its charge splits the earth behind it, leaving a canyon-like furrow in its wake. Gilgamesh and Enkidu leap aside, barely avoiding the horns the size of boat masts. The shockwave knocks a nearby tree clean out of the soil, roots snapping, leaves spiraling upward in helpless arcs. The power is immense, terrifying, divine. Historians still argue whether this part of the epic reflects actual natural disasters, earthquakes, famine, failed harvests, that ancient people attributed to divine wrath. Standing here now, watching the bull's hooves crack the ground, you understand why myths often feel more believable than facts. Gilgamesh rolls to his feet, brushing dust from his shoulders as if he's simply annoyed. "Ishtar is dramatic," he mutters. "That's what you're focusing on?" You think, dodging a chunk of flying dirt. "That's joke 1, your disbelief at Gilgamesh's priorities." The bull whips its tail, sending a boulder hurtling toward you like a sling stone. Enkidu grabs your arm and yanks you aside just in time. You nearly topple into one of the giant fissures. "Stay behind us!" Enkidu shouts. You nod quickly. Absolutely no objections. Gilgamesh regains his stance and shouts to the heavens, "Bull, face me!" The bull obliges immediately, charging again with force enough to uproot mountains. Gilgamesh meets it head-on, sliding beneath its chest and raking his axe upward. Sparks explode from the creature's bronze-like hide. Enkidu leaps onto its flank, gripping tightly as the bull bucks, trying to dislodge him like an inconveniently clingy squirrel. Joke 2, your mental image of Enkidu as an oversized squirrel refusing to let go. The bull rears, its shadow blotting out the sun. Gilgamesh dodges a deadly hoof strike that punches a crater into the ground. Enkidu climbs higher, reaching for the creature's horn. The bull twists violently. Enkidu yelps, not in fear, but irritation, as he's flung off, rolling across the ground before springing back to his feet. Gilgamesh shouts, "We need to strike together." Enkidu nods. On my signal! You watch the two warriors circle the bull, moving with a unity born from their clash back in Uruk. They weave and dodge, one distracting while the other approaches from the blind side. The bull roars again, lowering its head for a killing strike. Now! Enkidu cries. Gilgamesh jumps, slamming his axe into the bull's spine. Enkidu grabs the tail, yes, actually grabs it, and wrenches with a roar of effort. The bull's body jerks. Gilgamesh hammers down again. The creature stumbles, its knees buckle, its great head lowers to the earth. A final strike, a final cry, like a storm collapsing. The bull of heaven falls. The silence afterward is suffocating. Dust drifts. The earth stops shaking. You hear your own heartbeat pounding in your ears. Enkidu's chest rises and falls violently as he steps away from the bull's massive form. He wipes sweat from his brow. Gilgamesh stands still, chest heaving, eyes fixed on the horizon as though expecting Ishtar to descend screaming again at any moment. And then, as if on cue, a shriek tears through the skies. You look up. Ishtar stands atop the city walls of Uruk in the far distance, her rage audible even from here. She curses Gilgamesh, curses Enkidu, curses the earth itself for failing to protect her divine authority. Gilgamesh lifts the bull's severed horn toward her, a gesture somewhere between victory and mockery. Enkidu, fueled by adrenaline and maybe bad judgment, hurls a clod of dirt at her shrine in the far distance. You slap a hand over your face. Oh no. That's joke 3. Your growing suspicion these two are dangerously allergic to diplomacy. Ishtar screams curses so potent the clouds scatter. Then she vanishes in a violent burst of divine fury. But as her presence fades, something colder settles into the air. Enkidu suddenly sways. His face drains of color. His hand drifts to his chest. You see fear flicker there. Real, raw, unfamiliar. What's wrong? You ask. Enkidu blinks as if startled by the question, then looks toward Gilgamesh, eyes heavy with dread. The gods, he whispers, voice cracking. They will punish us. Gilgamesh steps forward, stubborn as always. Let them try. But Enkidu doesn't smile. His gaze drifts downward to his own trembling fingers. A chill knifes through your spine. You realize, with a sinking weight, that the victory here, the monsters slain, the glory claimed, has tipped something in the cosmic order. Something irreversible. You feel it watching. You feel it waiting. And though the bull of heaven lies defeated, a far greater storm begins gathering, slow and silent, just beyond the edge of your understanding. You feel the weight of the world shift the moment Enkidu's fingers begin to tremble. It's small at first, barely noticeable, but unmistakable. Something in him flickers, like a flame at the mercy of a sudden draft. You reach instinctively toward him, though you know you cannot alter the fate unfurling in front of you. Gilgamesh sees it too. His eyes widen, not with fear, but with disbelief, as though he refuses to accept what his heart already knows. Enkidu sinks to his knees. The sun beats down mercilessly. The bull of heaven lies motionless. The land, moments ago trembling with battle, grows eerily still, too still, as if nature itself is holding a breath it won't release. Enkidu. Gilgamesh steps closer. Enkidu swallows hard, as though his throat has thickened. A dream, he says. I had a dream last night. Gilgamesh's face tightens. You should have told me. I didn't want to worry you. You feel the heaviness of those words sink into the soil. Enkidu lifts his head, eyes dark with dread. The dream showed me the gods seated in judgment. Anu, Shamash, Enlil. They spoke my name. They said someone must pay for the death of the bull and of Humbaba. Gilgamesh shakes his head sharply. No. They have chosen me, Enkidu whispers. No. Gilgamesh's voice cracks like thunder. He grabs Enkidu's shoulders, squeezing hard as though he can anchor him in the world through sheer force of will. The wind stirs, light, aimless, yet somehow ominous. A fringe rumor you once heard drifts into your memory. Some storytellers claim that when a divine punishment is decreed, even the insects pause in sympathy. And strangely, you notice it now. The flies, the beetles, the buzzing creatures of the plains have all fallen quiet. For days after returning to Uruk, Enkidu weakens further. You watch the city shift from celebration to dread. The streets, once filled with noise, fall hushed as Enkidu walks by, leaning on a staff. Children stare with wide eyes. Elders murmur prayers beneath their breath. Gilgamesh remains at Enkidu's side constantly, guiding him through doorways, offering water, recounting old jokes, most of which are terrible, but Enkidu laughs anyway. One afternoon, Enkidu collapses near the river. Gilgamesh catches him before he hits the ground. Panic seizes the king's voice. Enkidu, don't! Enkidu smiles faintly. It's only dizziness. It's not, you think silently. The gods have made their decision. Later, as Enkidu rests in the palace, you walk with Gilgamesh onto the balcony. He grips the stone ledge as though it might break beneath his hands. It should have been me, he says, voice low and ragged. You feel the ancient truth of his anguish. Gilgamesh, whose strength commands armies, cannot command fate. Why him? He snarls to the sky. Why not me? The sky gives no answer. Historians still argue whether this part of the story reflects an early Mesopotamian meditation on mortality, or echoes real grief experienced by a historical king. But standing here now, watching Gilgamesh tremble, it feels painfully personal. Not mythic at all, just human. Inside, Enkidu calls for his friend. You return to the room with Gilgamesh. Enkidu's breath rattles in his chest, like pebbles shaken in a clay pot. His skin, once bronzed by the sun, has lost its warmth, yet his eyes, though tired, remain sharp. Gilgamesh, he whispers. Gilgamesh kneels beside him. Enkidu smiles weakly. Do you remember the day we fought, and how you laughed at me afterward? Gilgamesh huffs, tears already collecting. You nearly broke my arm. You deserved it. Joke 1. Soft, bittersweet, cracked down the middle. Enkidu continues. We carved our names into cedars. We slayed a guardian and a celestial bull. We stood against gods. Gilgamesh bites back a sob. We should have stood aside. Enkidu shakes his head. No, we lived. He closes his eyes briefly, inhaling through the pain. Promise me something. Anything. Do not let the walls of Uruk cage you. Do not let kingship define you. Seek something more. Gilgamesh leans forward. I will. Then Enkidu smiles again. Soft, tired, warm. And remember. He stops to catch his breath. Remember the woman who frightened you more than Humbaba. Gilgamesh snorts despite himself. Ishtar. Anyone would be frightened. Joke 2. Grief softened by the sting of shared memory. The room grows quieter. Too quiet. You feel the moment approaching like a tide you cannot outrun. Enkidu opens his eyes one final time, looking not at Gilgamesh but beyond him, toward the world he once belonged to. I see the steppe, he murmurs. The animals. They're running, waiting. Then he exhales and does not inhale again. Gilgamesh makes a sound unlike anything you've heard from him before. A raw, broken noise scraped from the bottom of his soul. He collapses over Enkidu's still form, clutching him, shaking him, begging him to wake. You stand frozen. The walls seem to dim around you. Even the lamps burn lower. Uruk is silent. The silence that follows the passing of a giant. For days, Gilgamesh wanders the city in madness. He refuses food. He refuses counsel. He refuses the priest's words, the Queen Mother's attempts to soothe him. One afternoon he storms into the marketplace, shouting at merchants, grabbing strangers by the shoulders and demanding, "How can you live, knowing you will die?" The people recoil, confused and frightened. You follow him as he wanders to the outskirts of the city, stumbling through fields, hair tangled, clothes soiled by dirt. He speaks to the wind. He speaks to the sky. He speaks to Enkidu, even though he knows there will be no answer. His grief is a storm with no horizon. His fear is sharper still. "If Enkidu can die," he whispers to you one night, voice trembling, "then I can die too." It is the first time he has truly spoken the truth of mortality. The realization hits him like a hammer, and it cracks him open completely. In the depths of that anguish, a wild idea takes root. "There is someone," he mutters. "Someone who survived the great flood. Someone who was granted everlasting life." You know the name before he says it. Utnapishtim. Gilgamesh breathes. "I will find him." He turns toward the horizon, eyes burning with desperation sharper than any weapon he has ever wielded. You feel the shift, the story lurching into a new shape. Gilgamesh is no longer searching for glory. He is searching for the one thing no mortal has ever claimed, immortality. And you, whether ready or not, are swept along as he begins the long, perilous journey toward the faraway. Joke 3 arrives unexpectedly when Gilgamesh trips over a root while storming off, a reminder that even grief cannot erase gravity. But his fury doesn't slow, his fear doesn't soften, and the road ahead stretches into darkness. You follow Gilgamesh as he storms away from Uruk, his steps uneven, his breath ragged, his shadow stretched long across the plain. The city fades behind you. Its walls, once symbols of pride, now feel like the bars of a cage he has shattered in desperation. The world ahead curves into a vast, merciless horizon, and the king, once a figure of unstoppable might, moves like a man chased by something only he can see. Death. He cannot outrun it, but he refuses to stop trying. For days you travel beside him through lands cracked by heat and stripped of comfort. Gilgamesh barely eats. He barely sleeps. You watch him mutter Enkidu's name to the wind, as though speaking it often enough might anchor his friend back into the world. Each night he jerks awake from nightmares, visions of Enkidu in the underworld, trapped among shadows that claw at the edges of his dreamscape. The anguish on the king's face grows deeper each morning, etched into him like cuneiform on wet clay. One afternoon, as you cross a barren stretch of gravel plains, Gilgamesh turns to you suddenly. "If a man simply lives and then dissolves into dust," he growls, "what meaning do kings or cities have?" You open your mouth, but he continues before you can answer. "I will not let death claim me," he swears. "I will find Utnapishtim. He holds the secret." His determination is terrifying, unshakable, the intensity of a drowning man clawing for a single breath. You travel through the land where scorpions stand guard at the mountain of Mashu. When Gilgamesh approaches, two colossal scorpion beings rise from the dust, their tails arched, their stingers gleaming like obsidian knives. Their voices rumble like shifting boulders. No mortal passes into the tunnel of the sun. Gilgamesh steps forward, not with arrogance, but with anguish. "I am Gilgamesh," he says. "I have lost my friend. I cannot accept death. Let me pass." The Scorpion Man gazes at him. "Your heart is torn in two." The Scorpion Woman adds, "And broken hearts walk dangerously." Historians still argue whether these guardians represent constellations, mythic beasts, or ritual gatekeepers. Standing before them now, they feel like embodiments of cosmic threshold, creatures meant to test the resolve of any who dare trespass into forbidden realms. After a long, heavy silence, the Scorpion Guardians step aside. "Then enter," they say, "if you can bear the darkness." Gilgamesh nods. You swallow hard and follow him into the mountain. Inside, the tunnel stretches for leagues, pitch black, endless, suffocating. You walk for hours in darkness so complete you cannot see your own hand. Gilgamesh stumbles repeatedly, clawing forward, muttering Enkidu's name like a prayer. You lose all sense of time, of space, of self. Then, just as despair begins to coil around your ribs, a pinprick of light appears. You emerge into a lush, sunlit garden blooming with gemstones, ruby leaves, sapphire flowers, branches shimmering like polished lapis. It is impossibly beautiful, like someone took the idea of paradise and carved it into color and stone. A woman with calm eyes and a weary smile waits beneath a bough of glittering vines. Siduri. She greets you gently, asking what grief drives Gilgamesh so far beyond the bounds of mortals. When he explains his quest for eternal life, she sighs softly, the way someone sighs after hearing the world's oldest wound reopened again. "Gilgamesh," she says, "you will never find the life you seek. Mortals are meant to live, to love, to eat bread, drink wine, hold children, enjoy the warmth of day. Death gives life meaning." Gilgamesh shakes his head violently. "No, I refuse. Tell me where Utnapishtim lives." Siduri hesitates, then directs him toward the ferryman, Urshanabi. You continue your journey, and soon you meet the ferryman at the shores of the waters of death. Urshanabi studies Gilgamesh carefully, as though measuring the fractures in his soul. "What drives a king to cross forbidden seas?" he asks. Gilgamesh answers simply. It is the most honest thing he has ever said. The ferryman agrees to guide him, but warns that the waters of death kill anything they touch. You help gather poles from a distant grove, carrying them back one by one. Gilgamesh works beside you, his strength returning slowly through purpose rather than pride. The journey across the water is a quiet one. No birds, no wind, no waves. Just the gentle push of poles sliding through black, glistening liquid. One pole breaks, another dissolves. You feel time unravel around you, thin and fragile. Then, a distant shape. A hut on a small, lonely shore. Utnapishtim, the man who survived the flood. He steps outside, an old figure with eyes full of sorrow and memory far too vast for any human. Gilgamesh kneels before him, not as a king, but as a broken man desperate for hope. "I have suffered," Gilgamesh pleads. "Tell me how you gained eternal life." Utnapishtim sighs deeply. "Why do you chase a gift no mortal was meant to hold?" He tells the story of the great flood, how the gods destroyed humanity, but chose to spare him and his wife alone. He speaks of building a boat, releasing a dove, surviving the end of the world. It is a story older than cities, older than memory, older than the earth's own scars. Then he looks at Gilgamesh, tired, compassionate, unyielding. "You cannot escape death," he says quietly. "You can only learn to live." But Gilgamesh protests. So Utnapishtim offers one final test. Stay awake for 6 days and 7 nights. Gilgamesh accepts, confident, even smug. You sit beside him. His eyelids droop within minutes. He falls asleep instantly. You groan. Utnapishtim chuckles. Joke 1. Gilgamesh's legendary failure at nap resistance. Gilgamesh wakes to find freshly baked loaves stacked beside him, one for each day he slept. He stares at them in disbelief. He mutters. Failed? Yes? Utnapishtim says, spectacularly. Joke 2. Utnapishtim's deadpan honesty. But compassion softens the old man. He tells of a plant at the bottom of the sea, a thorny sprout granting renewed youth. Gilgamesh dives, retrieves it. Triumph blazes in his eyes. But on the journey home, when he stops to bathe, a serpent slithers out, steals the plant, and sheds its skin as it slinks away. Renewed, reborn. Gilgamesh collapses to his knees, staring at the ripples fading in the water. It is the final lesson. He cannot escape death. He can only live meaningfully before it comes. Joke 3 arrives as Gilgamesh mutters, "Of course, a snake. Why not a goat while we're at it?" Referencing the goat back in section 1. At last, Gilgamesh returns to Uruk. You walk beside him through the gates, and he looks at the city not with pride, not with power, but with quiet awe. "These walls," he whispers, this will outlast me." He touches the bricks with reverence. He sees Enkidu in every stone. He sees himself, not as a god, but as a man. And the story begins to slow, soften, and settle around you like dust finding its resting place. The world grows gentler now. The sharp edges of grief, the fierce storms of battle, the frantic chase through darkness, all of it begins to ease as though the story itself exhales. You feel the pace slow beneath your feet. The sunlight softens. The wind quiets. Even the great walls of Uruk seem to steady their breath as you walk beside Gilgamesh one final time. He stands upon the ramparts, gazing over the city that shaped him, humbled him, and held him through seasons of glory and ruin. And as he rests a hand upon the warm brick, you sense his heart settling into a place of calm acceptance. The fear that once gnawed at him has loosened. The grief carved into him by Enkidu's loss has become something gentle, painful still, but softened by memory, shaped by love. You close your eyes for a moment, letting the quiet wash over you. The markets below murmur faintly, their sounds distant and soft, like lullabies drifting through a warm twilight. Somewhere a lyre plays a slow, wistful tune. Somewhere a child laughs. Somewhere an old man tells a story that sounds a little like this one, though perhaps gentler, perhaps shorter, perhaps told only to comfort a sleepless mind. Gilgamesh breathes deeply, and you breathe with him. The world no longer rushes. It settles like sand drifting to the bottom of a river. You let the final images unfold slowly, the sun dipping low, the sky turning amber, the city glowing as though lit from within. And in that fading light, the shape of Gilgamesh seems both immense and peacefully small. A man who finally understands what endures. You let this feeling stay with you for a long, lingering moment. And then, softly, everything fades.